You did everything right. You were kind. You showed up. You remembered the small things. You made her laugh at the right moments. You were patient when most men wouldn't have been. And then, without warning, she chose someone else. Not someone better looking, not someone who treated her better, not someone who offered her more than you did. Someone different. And that single word, different, is where this entire story begins. Most men, when this happens, move to the obvious explanations. He must have more money. He must be taller. He must be better at something visible, something measurable, something they can fix. So they upgrade. They change how they dress. They go to the gym. They read about attraction, study behavior, adjust the way they talk, the way they text, the way they enter a room. And sometimes, it still doesn't work. Not because the upgrades were wrong, because they were solving the wrong problem. What she felt had nothing to do with the surface. It never did. It operated at a layer most men never see, a layer beneath logic, beneath language, beneath anything rational. And understanding that layer, that's where this changes. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. Women don't choose men based on what they observe. They choose based on what they feel. And feeling, real, deep, involuntary feeling, doesn't respond to effort. It doesn't respond to kindness. It doesn't respond to doing the right things at the right times. It responds to something much older than that. Something that doesn't care how good you are, or how loyal, or how much you wanted it to work. That's the first layer. And most men stop here, confused because the logic doesn't add up. Good men lose. Difficult men win. The world seems backwards. But it isn't backwards. It's just operating on a different set of rules than the ones you were taught. Level 1 is the surface. This is where most men compete their entire lives. Looks, height, physique, status signals, the car, the watch, the apartment. And this layer is real. It exists, it matters, but only as a filter, not as a decision. She might notice the surface. She processes it quickly, automatically, and moves past it. The surface is the door. What's behind it is what she actually opens. Most men never realize they've been spending years renovating a door no one was looking at. Level 2 is the signal. Every man sends a signal, constantly, without knowing it. Not through words, not through appearance, through behavior. Through the way he responds when things don't go his way. Through the way he holds himself when she pulls back. Through the way he moves through the world when no reward is guaranteed. She reads this, not analytically, automatically. She doesn't sit down and assess you. She feels you. And the feeling forms before she's even conscious of it. The man she chose, his signal was different from yours. Not louder, not more polished, not better rehearsed. Just different in one specific way. His presence communicated something that yours didn't. And she felt it the way you feel a temperature change in a room, without looking for it, without asking for it. It was just there, and it told her something. That's when things start to shift. Level 3 is the invisible architecture. Underneath every genuine attraction is a structure, an invisible one built from small moments, small observations, small feelings stacked quietly over time. Does he lead, or does he wait for someone to give him permission? Does he have a direction of his own, or does he orbit her life looking for a place to land? Does he need her to confirm his value, or does he already know what he is? She never asks these questions out loud. She never writes them down. She doesn't even frame them as questions. But they're being answered continuously. Every interaction, every silence, every small moment of pressure. The man who always agreed, who adjusted himself to keep her comfortable, who made her the center of everything he was doing. He didn't feel weak because he was weak. He felt weak because the architecture he built communicated dependency. And dependency, even when it comes from love, reads as instability to the system underneath. This is where most men get stuck, because they believe that love, the real kind, the devoted kind, should be enough. And maybe in a rational world, it would be. But attraction doesn't live in a rational world. Level 4 is the polarity layer. This is where it gets dark. Real attraction doesn't run on similarity. It doesn't run on comfort. It doesn't run on shared values or perfect timing or consistent effort. It runs on polarity, on tension, on the invisible pull between two defined energies. The man who created something inside her, that pull, that electricity she couldn't quite explain. He didn't do it by being perfect. He did it by being defined. He had edges. He had a direction that existed before she arrived. He occupied his own space and didn't step out of it to make room for her approval. That contrast between his certainty and her uncertainty created tension. And tension is the engine of desire. This is the layer that genuinely good men rarely reach. Because good men are trained, by society, by family, by everything, to eliminate tension, to be agreeable, to make the space around them warm and comfortable and easy. But in attraction, comfort is the slow death of desire. This isn't moral. It isn't fair. It isn't a reflection of your worth as a person. It's just the psychological reality of how this system operates. Level 5 is the system beneath it all. She didn't choose him because of a strategy. She chose him because of a feeling she couldn't fully name. That feeling, that irrational, involuntary preference, it wasn't random. It was the output of a system running beneath her conscious mind. A system that wasn't built for happiness, not for fairness, not for logic. Built for something far older, for stability signals, for directional signals, for the quiet electricity of a man who has already decided who he is and doesn't need external confirmation to stay there. And here's the truth that lands the hardest. You can be everything she should want and still lose to someone who shouldn't make sense on paper. Not because you weren't enough, but because enough was never the language this system speaks. The system doesn't respond to effort. It doesn't respond to loyalty or patience or love. It responds to signal, to presence, to the quiet gravity of a man who doesn't need the outcome to know his own value. The man she chose, he may not have understood any of this consciously. He may have had no framework for it at all. But something in him communicated one thing above everything else. I already know what I am. You can stay or you can leave. Either way, I remain. And that, more than looks, more than charm, more than anything visible, is what the system was waiting to feel. Most men spend their lives trying to be chosen, performing, upgrading, adjusting, quietly auditioning for a role they don't realize they've already been evaluated for. The deeper tragedy isn't that they lost. It's that they were playing a game whose rules were never written down, whose criteria was never spoken, whose scoring system operated entirely beneath language. The men who eventually understood, not perfectly, not from a book, but from something internal, they stopped trying to be chosen. They started building something that had nothing to do with her, something that existed before she arrived, something that would continue after she left. Not because they stopped caring, because they realized the signal doesn't come from trying to send it. It comes from becoming someone who doesn't need to. And that shift, from performing to becoming, is the one that changes everything. Here's what's unsettling about all of this. She already knew. Not with words, not with reasoning, but somewhere beneath all of it, in the part of her that processes signals without language, she already knew who you were. Before you made a move, before you said the right thing, before you did everything a good man is supposed to do. The answer was already forming, not based on what you looked like, based on what you radiated. And that, quietly, invisibly, without a single word spoken, is what she chose.